Mm.
Welcome into the Talkin Tide podcast on the Belly Up Podcast Network. I'm Chase Goodbread, sports columnist with the Tuscaloosa News. I'm joined by Travis Reier, the longtime senior analyst at BamaOnline.com. The Talkin Tide podcast coming to you twice weekly in the fall as we cover this 2023 Alabama football season. You can get us at Apple Podcasts or wherever you prefer to get your podcasts. We're on YouTube and Facebook Live as well. The Twitter feed is talking_tide. Give us a follow there. You'll get instant links to all of our podcasts right there on the Twitter feed. I want to thank Peterbrook Chocolatier of Tuscaloosa and Heat Pizza Bar, our two fine local sponsors here in Tuscaloosa. And with that, Travis, we get underway here on a Sunday nighter to recap Alabama's 24-21 homecoming win over the Arkansas Razorbacks, a game that looked well in hand at the half, looked even more well in hand when Alabama popped a field goal to extend that lead even further to 24-6 at the time. And then you kind of blink your eyes and it's a 3-point game and Arkansas has got the ball near midfield.
They do. And you said it. Alabama looked like it was really exerting its will in the run game on those first couple of possessions of the second half. But you only get 3 points out of both of those possessions. You have the big face mask penalty on Jalen Key. That provides life to the Arkansas team and KJ Jefferson. KJ Jefferson, not a guy you want to leave around. You know, when you have an opportunity to really put your foot down on him, and I know Arkansas's been in all these games. We talked about it. But that's due in large part to the quarterback, KJ Jefferson, because when you look at this Arkansas team with a different quarterback, it's not pretty, I don't think. But Alabama did enough down the stretch, kind of survived itself once again. And there it is, still atop those SEC Western Division standings with a couple of big ones coming up.
4-0 in SEC play, halfway through that SEC schedule, unbeaten. And of course, Tennessee up next. We'll be taking a close look at the third Saturday in October showdown against the Vols for our midweek podcast. But as we look back at this Arkansas win, Travis, you start with, like you said, the running game. We saw a couple more backs, right? Little action from Miller and Haynes, which we really hadn't seen much of here of late. So interesting to see. And Nick Saban asked about that in the post-game presser. He said all along those two guys are ready to play, and we still hadn't seen them. But I thought both of those guys gave Alabama a little bit of juice in the second half. And, of course, it was a pretty good game for Williams and McClellan as well. Pass protection, again, an issue. It's going to be an issue all year at this point. I don't know why anybody would think otherwise. Jalen Milroe takes 5 sacks. I saw this crazy stat, Travis. I didn't independently verify it, but I don't doubt that it's true. Milroe's the first FBS quarterback, apparently, to take 4 or more sacks in 7 straight games in 20 years in the whole FBS.
It's a lot. And there are still times where if Jalen had more of an innate ability to kind of feel pressure or kind of sense that, look, they're bringing 5 here, they're bringing 6, I got to get the ball out hot. You still see some instances where he has like shallow crossers that he just doesn't hit. He doesn't have that sort of Bryce Young type of ability that way. And I'm convinced as much as anything, a lot of that you're born with. I understand some of it is developable, I guess, if that's a word, but it was largely the left tackle position once again on Saturday. Even by most quarterback standards, you're going to have a hard time getting the ball out. You also had a pass protection situation on one of those with Justice Haynes, a little bit of a soft edge to the other side. But you're right. I don't know what to tell Alabama fans at this point. I guess if you want to think about it in these terms, at least J.C. Latham's healthy. Because if you lose J.C. Latham, you start thinking about your offensive tackle spots then.
Right. No question. And Latham's had a fine year. It begs the question a little bit. I think you and I have touched on this in a couple of other podcasts. A little bit of a head scratcher why Latham wasn't moved to the left side to handle that blind side straight from spring practice, which was I talked to him about it at the Sugar Bowl in New Orleans, and at that time, he told me he was excited about giving it a whirl over there on the left side. Never really happened. Never did play on the left side in a spring or fall scrimmage that I'm aware of. For whatever reason, they just decided that JC is better off on the right side. And look, the whole left side, right side thing is maybe a little bit overrated because nowadays you see big time heat from both edges, but it still makes a difference when the quarterback's right handed and can see it coming from the right side, as opposed to Milrow being a right handed quarterback. When he catches it from the left side, it catches him blind. I mean, and it makes it more difficult, makes it more dangerous in terms of turnovers. Right, you're going to see more fumbles pop out on a blindside hit. So these are all things that factor into it.
Yeah, and you're right. In today's game, you see offenses go empty with five-man protection. So both your tackles have to be able to protect, but there's also still huddle and things like that out there, tape, where your upcoming opponents, when they see the weaker of your two tackles, where do you think they're going to try to get their best pass rushers matched up? I mean, look at Landon Jackson for Arkansas on Saturday. Where did just about everything he did
Right.
come in the game against Alabama? It came against those left tackles.
Elsewhere offensively for Alabama, a couple of big shots from Milrow in the first half. Obviously, the big touchdown pass to Kobe Prentice, 79 yards. Hit Jermaine Burton for another deep one along the right sideline on that home sideline. I think that went for 44. Over the top to Niblack for 29 yards and another touchdown. There's a comfort level, and it's somewhat surprising, I guess, because for a team that struggles in pass protection as much as Alabama does, you wouldn't think the long ball would be much of an option. But when they are able to get time, and look, sometimes when they get time for these deep shots, they got 7 guys in there protecting, sometimes even 8. And so, that certainly changes things from a protection standpoint. It changes things for Milrow too, because the more you do that, the more you might only have 2 or 3 options to throw to. But definitely, Milrow and Burton especially seem to have developed some chemistry with that long ball, Travis.
Yeah, the deep ball to Prentice, I want to say was maybe five-man protection. At most, it was 6 because of what you just said. Made me think of that. They were able to get different guys out into the route, which draws the attention of a couple of safeties to your tight end who's able to get out in the route. And because of that, you got a double move with Kobe Prentice, and he's wide open in the middle of the field. So it does matter, whether you can block with 5, 6, or 7, because it does alter things potentially in what you're able to do when it comes to throwing the football. But yeah, the explosive plays, man, talked about this after the game too. That 3-play sequence there late in the first quarter where you went run for nothing, you went shotgun snap off of Jalen, who wasn't expecting the snap, and then you hit a 79-yard deep ball for a touchdown.
Yeah.
That's Alabama offense 2023. If you want to know what this offense is right now, this is it. That's it.
The dropped pass bugaboo came out again in the second half too. Benson with a big drop, certainly in the second half. He wasn't the only one. We saw Ja'Cory Brooks with a little drop on a screen. That one maybe not quite so costly, but and look, the wide receiving core for the most part has cleaned that problem up from last year. But you didn't like to see that spring back out against the Razorbacks.
No, and it'd been, as you said, it'd been so good, really, for the first 5, 6 games of the season. Hale had a tough one in the middle of the field. Went up and tried to high point it. I thought Jalen could have put the ball on him a little bit better. And Jalen wasn't particularly accurate in the second half in his own right, but that was one that stood out. I think some people would view that as a drop. I thought that was more of a 50-50. That was more of a credit Hale if he is able to finish that catch because he went up so high and controlled his body so well. And then the ground is such a immovable object, man. The way some of these guys go into the turf, it was a tough one, but yeah, some guys that did some good things. Ja'Cory did a couple of good things, right? He had the explosive that you talked about earlier on a 3rd and 15, uh, kind of early in the game, second quarter, I want to say. And
Right.
then he also did some good things from some sort of condensed formations. They motioned him back in, were able to get some some blocking from him in some good spots too.
Still not seeing much of any screen game from Alabama this season, Travis. In your opinion, is that a function of maybe they just don't feel like this offensive line is athletic enough to get out and block in space? Or is there more to than that? Because there's other ways to get a screen game going too. I mean, you can throw a screen into trips, right? There's other ways to do it.
They don't have a quick game, really. Like you talked about, like we saw with Arkansas even on Saturday. Arkansas able to get the ball out to the flanks quickly. We've seen that from Alabama in the past. We know it's in the Alabama playbook. But this offense, for whatever reasons, maybe it has to do with the offensive line when it comes to maybe more of a traditional screen game, because they want to get the ball to these backs. They've talked all off season and into the season about how good they feel about their backs. The screen game would seem to be it. So, it could be that it's a combination of things. Maybe it's the offensive line. Maybe it's something that Jalen's just not comfortable with. We don't see much RPO throws from Jalen either. We don't see
Right.
quick game throws. We don't see RPO throws, and we don't see traditional screen game throws. So, what does that really leave you with? That leaves you with some play action and mostly intermediate to deep throws. I mean, that's essentially what their passing game is.
All right, offensively for Alabama too, I thought it was encouraging, Travis, the way they and defense too. Let me back up. The last 7 minutes of the fourth quarter uh, was where Alabama was able to nail this thing down and kind of stem that Arkansas comeback. Arkansas drove the ball, I think, from its own 8 to about its own 44 on their last possession, and then as soon as they got near midfield, Alabama was able to stone them, force a punt. Sam Pittman decided to go, I guess, a little bit conservative there, figured he could maybe get the ball back, which is understandable because Alabama only scored 3 points the whole second half. So if you're Sam Pittman, yeah, I guess you do go ahead and punt there and play defense. But then Alabama takes over the football, Travis, with I think about roughly 5.5 minutes left to go in the game, and they squeezed out every tick on that clock to finish it out with couple of key third down conversions in the running game.
They did. Jalen had the one
Passing game,
scramble.
too.
Yeah, Jalen had the one scramble on a 3rd and 3 that was preceded by he actually swung the ball for one of the few times to the back. Hit Jace out there. Jace did a nice job after the catch, picked up 5 yards. Jalen was able to convert a 3rd and 3 with his legs. And then the offensive line and Jace McClellan did a nice job. Now, you also saw some of Roydell in there in that possession, but I give Jace a lot of credit in some of these in-game scenarios the last couple weeks. He's been really good. He's been physical. You've seen him try to provide leadership to the offense in those situations as well, and so he's been exactly what you need a veteran back to be. And he's
All right, let's.
taking care of the ball.
Right.
We haven't talked about that really all season. These guys haven't put the ball on the ground, man. And you think about the shot Jace took on the one run on that last possession, that little
Right.
inside zone they ran, and that safety for Arkansas at the snap just started running downhill and
Yeah.
drilled him. I mean, that could have been a turnover right there. And so it's the things we don't talk about sometimes that are the biggest.
No doubt. All right. McClellan's been outstanding in ball security. Really, all the backs have. Defensively for Alabama, only give up 250 yards for the entire game, Travis. So for the game to be as close as it was, Alabama's defense, I thought, did a really good job. Got a lot of pressure again on the quarterback, on Jefferson. Had the one play that Saban mentioned in the post game where Terry and Arnold had him pretty much around the back and got slung 360, maybe that was 720 degrees. It might have been twice around, but Jefferson was able to throw him off. Dallas Turner was asked about that in the post game. He said, "Look, it's like me trying to sack Will Anderson." That's what he said about what Arnold went through on that play. But nevertheless, Alabama was able to get some pretty good heat on him, and I thought defensively played really well overall.
They were in great shape. until the 15-yard penalty on Key. I mean, they were
Yeah.
off the field with an 18-point lead. Arkansas was ready to go get on the plane. That's what Arkansas looked like to me. And you get the 15-yard penalty, then you get another 15-yard penalty. So that drive, you're talking about 30 yards and free yards.
Mm-hmm.
Now, there were some things in between all of that that Alabama could have done to have helped itself. And Jefferson is, man. I mean, he is a tough dude to tackle, and it usually takes more than one. I give some of these guys credit. I think Tresman Marshall got him on the ground there on a blitz in the first half. But if you're 190 to 200 pounds, this guy has a way of kind of just settling, anchoring, and will shake you. He
Yeah.
has a knack for it. Bryce Young was amazing that way. Because think about how much smaller Bryce Young is than KJ Jefferson. And we saw Bryce do it against Texas when Texas
Mm-hmm.
brought a corner and he was able to shake that corner and make the big play late in Austin a couple of years ago. So it's not something every quarterback can do, but I guess if you're 240 plus, it's something you're more likely to be able to do.
Just not a lot of help for KJ Jefferson on that Arkansas offense. Not a
No,
lot of help up front. The offensive lines had a terrible time.
even compared to last year. And last year, that wasn't exactly Florida State 99 or Alabama 2018
Yeah.
when it came to supporting cast. But man, as I said earlier, you take KJ out of that mix and just put the typical Arkansas quarter, you put Casey Dick in there, some of these guys from the past.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's 44-7
Brandon Allen.
Saturday.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Throw him
like
in
Brandon
there.
Allen. I thought the Allen brothers were maybe a little undervalued, but yeah. Yeah, that's a good one too.
That was when Brett Bielema decided he wasn't just going to ground and pound. Because remember when Bielema
Yeah,
first got there,
hogs.
he was all about that
Yeah.
offensive line, all about going to grind you out. And then those Allens come in there and they're throwing 45 balls a game.
Yeah, Dan Enos was there before too. Air Enos.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
were airing it out for sure. I think it was the 2000 when the 2000 maybe 16 game in Fayetteville. That was a wild one. A lot of points in that one with
You,
Jalen Hurts and those guys.
you're so much better than I am about remembering
I think
specific
Minka had
games.
3 picks in that game maybe in Fayetteville in 16.
I'll,
Yeah,
I'll take
housed
your
one.
word for it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think. I
you
don't know. I'm getting old, man.
you've got a memory. You got a hell of a memory when it comes to harkening back to
Yeah, just don't
games of
ask me my
yesteryear.
anniversary, when my anniversary is. Yeah, I'm good. Other
We've
than that.
all only got so much room up there for data, Travis.
Uh-huh. But it's work,
Special
honey.
teams,
Yeah.
real quick for Alabama. Riker comes up big again, burn up off that pulled muscle. No worse for the wear. He was launching punts. He's looking like the new J.K. Scott. I mean, he's banging them 50 yards like it's nothing now. And Riker comes up big once again, becomes the SEC's all-time leading scorer. I think Riker needs 44 more points to be the NCAA's
Yeah.
all-time leading scorer. What an honor
Yeah.
that would be. And then, of course, Arkansas comes in with Cam Little, hits this 55-yarder. That thing would have been good from 65, Travis. That would have broken the Missouri kicker just busted Kevin Butler's old field goal record a few weeks ago. Cam
Uh-huh.
Little's 55-yarder at Bryant Denny, that would have blown that field goal out of the water.
100 years ago, Arkansas had a kicker by the name, I think, of Steve Cox. But this was back in the era when they got to use just about any kind of football they wanted to. And they were kicking off the 2-inch tees. And the goalposts were like
Yeah.
6 feet wider than they are now. All these things have changed since the 70s and 80s. I think Steve Cox kicked one maybe 69 back in the day. But you're right, man. That kick by Cam Little and the 49-yarder was the same way. But the 55 was especially impressive because it hit up in the E in Allstate in the net.
Yeah.
So I agree. That thing was Cam Little's only a junior. He might be a 3 and out as a
That
kicker.
was a big time boot, no question about it. All right, here on the Talkin Tide podcast, we're gonna move on and thank a couple of sponsors here really quickly. Going to start by telling you all about Heat Pizza Bar and that fantastic pizza that Frank Fleming and his staff are throwing out there at Government Square Plaza, downtown Tuscaloosa. You just can't beat it. You've got, see if I can pull this at the menu here, Travis, and it's so diverse. So much to choose from. If you're a pizza lover, there's something for everybody. They've got the perfect pepperoni. They've got the margarita. Those are your traditional pizzas. They've got the house standard, which is fantastic. They've got a meat lovers, a barbecue chicken, and then they've got the Thai chicken, the buffalo
Yeah,
chicken, the chicken
that's
bacon ranch.
that's the one.
Getting
And
them
they're
in
all
there.
great. Yeah.
Yeah, no question about it. Daily specials as well. $9 Thai chicken pizzas on Tuesdays from 2 to 6 p.m. Also, outstanding drink specials going on pretty much all day until close Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And of course, happy hour 2 to 6 p.m. Sunday. Ton of flat screen TVs over there. As always, you can check out all the football action right over there at Heat Pizza Bar, 2256th Street, downtown Government Square.
As I moved into the golden era, I become more of a wine drinker. So that Styles cocktail there at Heat, if you haven't tried that, you need to do that. And of course, you need to try Peterbrook Chocolatier of Tuscaloosa as well. You've probably already tried Peterbrook, but if not, get by and check them out. 1530 McFarland Boulevard North in the Indian Hills section of Tuscaloosa. All those great choices for you once you walk into the store, and that aroma from that chocolate wheel churning out that fresh chocolate that is going to be used on those fresh strawberries, making those specific gifts for you. If you've got a client, maybe a customer, maybe just a loved one or a good friend that you want to present with something very specific in chocolate, Peterbrook Chocolatier at 1530 McFarland Boulevard North in the Indian Hills section of Tuscaloosa will take great care of you.
All right, the Talkin Tide podcast on the Belly Up Podcast Network, the Twitter feed talking_tide. We are going to look around the SEC really quickly, then we'll take a dip into that two deep tumbler before we get out of here. Around the league, Travis, most interesting, Tennessee 20-13, a home win for the Vols. Kind of sets up a nice little showdown. Both teams with one loss going into that Alabama-Tennessee game this weekend at Bryant-Denny. But the offense for Texas A&M sputters once again, just 13 points. And look, Tennessee can play some defense. I get it. That's a tough place to score points this year anyway. But man, if you're Jimbo Fisher, you got a lot of explaining to do, Travis. And Bruce Feldman, by the way, reporting that they're going to come up with that 77 mil if he doesn't get it done this year. 77 mil on a buyout, Travis. I think that would like triple the record if they ran him off.
A lot of money in those tall buildings in Houston and Dallas, Chase. A lot of money in the tall buildings. You know, they'll just pass around that brass spittoon they have until the boys and gals fill it up, they'll say, you know. It's tough because you bring in Bobby Petrino too to help you out with the offense. And I get it, Connor Weigman's out, but Max Johnson's a guy that's played a good bit of Southeastern Conference football. And the biggest problem I see with A&M, though, is up front. You know, they couldn't block Alabama. They couldn't block Tennessee. And what I saw of that game on Saturday, and Max Johnson is a solid quarterback. He's also not a guy that's going to really threaten defenses down the field as much. So you can get him in sort of these windows where that offense can be in a tough spot. But it's going to be very interesting to see how this A&M team finishes the season.
Yeah, Johnson's an anticipatory thrower, right? And Bobby Petrino can work with guys like that. He's had success with guys like that, but the problem with that is if you're a little off with some of that anticipation, that ball can be going the other way.
A lot of pressure too.
Yeah,
He is a crafty runner. He's not particularly athletic, but again, he reminds me kind of Mike Shula of 2023 when Mike was a player at Alabama.
Mm-hmm.
Mike could do a lot of those same things, but when it came to really pushing the ball down the field, that's where this A&M offense has its problems, and that's a problem because they've got weapons. They've got guys at wide receiver.
LSU 48-18 over Auburn. Travis, that one not particularly close. This LSU offense just looks unstoppable, and they've got their problems on defense. But man, another 550 or so yards against AU for this LSU group. Jaden Daniels, another big game for the Tigers. They've got the running game going. They've got the receivers. It's a scary looking game for anybody, and again, they've got a lot of work to do on defense. Giving up 18 to Auburn doesn't mean they've fixed anything on that side of the ball, because Auburn just can't move the ball consistently. But it's a juggernaut of an offense down there in Baton Rouge.
There's no doubt about that. You said it. They got the run game going now. Daniels, in his own right, can do it with his legs. He doesn't need a lot of help, but they're getting that right now from the traditional run game. And yeah, I'm with you. Going against Auburn's offense right now is the equivalent of a trip to the health resort for defenses that need it. So we'll see about the LSU defense. But it's a matchup, no doubt. A couple of 3 Saturdays in Tuscaloosa has all the makings of being highly, highly anticipated.
Missouri 38-21 over Kentucky. That was a SEC East battle of two teams that entered with one loss. Kentucky now with 2 losses. Somebody going to ask Mark Stoops how big of an NIL war chest it'll take to beat Missouri on that radio show this week. Is he going to get that question?
There's people will tell you Missouri's actually done a really good job in NIL. I know, right?
Yeah.
It's still Mizzou at the end of the day, but yeah, that looked like Kentucky kind of looked like we've seen teams look like after they've played Alabama the previous week. That's what
Mm-hmm.
Kentucky kind of looked like as that game wore on after playing Georgia the previous week. And it wasn't like Kentucky got off to a especially slow start, but just seemed to wilt and fade as that game moved along. Hey, Missouri's a good team, man. Brady Cook at quarterback's having a great year. Luther Burden at wide receiver, one of the best in the country. And defensively, though, compared to the previous year or two, that's where Mizzou's made the most strides.
Yeah, Burden's big time. There's no doubt. I believe he was recruited by Alabama, if I'm not
Yeah,
mistaken. But
hard.
he's a big time target for Brady Cook, and Cook's a guy who can run a little bit. Probably doesn't get enough credit for his
Gutty. He's a
athleticism.
gutty runner, you know.
Yeah,
He'll
yeah,
he'll sell
Missouri.
it out. He'll sell it out for old state U. He's that kind of runner.
All right, let's jump into this two deep tumbler really quick before we get out of here. We'll see who pops out. Sure, it'll be somebody we've already discussed, because that's how the tumbler works. You know what? 88 came out of the tumbler. That's Miles Kitselman, but we've already had Miles. We did Miles earlier in the summer, so I'm expelling him. I'm throwing him out. I'm gonna get another number out of here. I don't
Maybe
know how
we
he
could
got
do
back
like
in there.
retro 88s. Maybe we can do like Marco Battle, or Kenny
There
Smith,
you
the
go.
defensive lineman from years ago.
Yes, yes. Marco Battle,
Yeah.
late 80s.
Yes. Yes. He was on
Is
that
that right?
89 team. Yeah.
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 56 out of the tumbler. Seth McLaughlin, the Alabama center, much maligned in September with the shotgun snaps, and I guess that problem's lingered a little bit, but at least lately, Travis, it seems like um, that shotgun snap problem. I'm not going to say it's been cleaned up, but it's less of a problem, let's say, than it was in September.
Yeah. It's not like Newt Lelouch from Bull Durham anymore, you know? Um, and you hate that for Seth because as we talked about, that really hadn't been an issue prior to this season. And you look at the game against Arkansas, that 2nd and 13 where Milrow threw that floater over the middle to Amari Niblack to move the chains there on that final possession. Seth gave up a little bit of a pressure there, got hit with a swim move by the Arkansas defensive lineman. But Seth did some good things too in review of the game in the run game. I think he's rounding back into form, and a guy that's been solid again, as you said. Just the shotgun snaps just seem to come out of nowhere this season.
Yeah, yeah. I do think McLaughlin's starting to play a little bit better football here down the stretch. Alabama certainly needs it. They need it from all those guys up front. But I kind of got the sense that the interior OL as a whole maybe gelled a little bit. Jaden Roberts back in there in that
Yeah,
lineup, Travis, against Arkansas. Maybe that's helping as
did
well. And
did some good things pulling Jaden Roberts in the run game, and
Yeah.
Tyler Booker some too, and even J.C. Latham. They got moving a little bit, maybe more gap scheme to go along with the zone stuff. A little bit more of a mix that we saw against Arkansas.
All right, that is going to do it for this edition of the Talkin Tide podcast on the Belly Up Podcast Network. Be sure to join Travis and I midweek when we preview the Alabama-Tennessee game. Until then, we'll talk to you next time right here on Talkin Tide.